Okay, hey, we're back at Wanderlust. So today I want to do a video that's going to be about Forrest Fenn's interview. I believe it was called Radio New Zealand, and the interview date was April 3rd, 2013. So that's a good 6 years ago. And this is one of the earliest interviews for the Thrill of the Chase. And I'm going to look at first some newer ones, but let's stay on topic. It's Forrest Fenn interview, Radio New Zealand, April 3rd, 2013. Let's listen in, shall we? So here we go.
Hear me all and listen good. Your effort will be worth the cold if you are brave, and in the wood I give you title to the gold. And that is the last part of a poem, and we've got a link to it all on our Facebook page, by a man being described in media as a modern-day Indiana Jones, who's sparked a massive treasure hunt in the mountains near his home in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Forrest Fenn, an antiquities dealer, an adventurer, claims to have buried a bronze chest.
So, interestingly enough, the Radio New Zealand interviewer says buried. And that's worth noting that in his introduction he says Forrest Fenn buried the chest. So let's continue to listen in here.
Full of rare gold coins and nuggets and thrilling artifacts somewhere in the hills. And the poem from his autobiography, The Thrill of the Chase, contains clues to the treasure. And hundreds of modern-day treasure hunters are travelling to New Mexico in search of gold as we speak. Forrest Fenn is on the line with us from Santa Fe, New Mexico. Hello, Forrest.
Well, how are you, sir? I'm doing very fine, thank you.
Very nice to have you on. Before I ask about the treasure, let's talk about you, because you are a very interesting man. You were a prominent art dealer for many years. What is your background, please?
Well, I'm a high school graduate, although I just barely graduated. I didn't go to college, and I spent 20 years a fighter pilot in the Air Force, and I was shot down twice in Vietnam, and I came home to build an art gallery, and I just put one leg in front of the other, and here I am.
You built a very celebrated art gallery.
Now, I think another interesting point here is that Forrest Fenn use of that he tells us it's been 20 years and then two. And the reason I want to make that point, I've made it a bunch of other times, is that the use of numbers. So I'll make a note of that again. So let's continue to listen in.
Gallery with famous clients like a US president, Jackie Kennedy as well, Cher, John Wayne. They were all, you knew them all, didn't you?
Well, the secret to getting well known in this business is to advertise full page color, and I did that, and so I had some pretty good paintings, so I attracted the collectors.
I know, Steven Spielberg, Steve Martin. So, the treasure in the chest. Now, can you tell us, please, why you've done this, Forrest?
First of all, I'm going to correct what you said earlier. I've never said that I buried the treasure chest. What I've said is that I hid it. That's not to say that it isn't buried, but I don't want to give that clue.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay.
So I think that's a really interesting moment in the interview, very early on, that Forrest Fenn corrects the interviewer. The point that Forrest Fenn makes is that the treasure is that he hid it, and it's not buried. But the part that I still find very interesting is right behind that, you could almost put a comma, and he says, but it isn't to say that it isn't buried. So it's very interesting that he goes out of his way to say that I hid it, but it's not to say that it isn't buried. So that seems like a very odd, it's kind of an odd moment. But the thing that I think is interesting, if I can get behind this here, is, let's listen to this again.
Earlier, I've never said that I buried the treasure chest. What I've said is that I hid it. That's not to say that it isn't buried, but I don't want to give that clue.
Okay.
The other part of that that's interesting is I don't want to give that clue, which as a Forrest Fenn searcher, that immediately perks up my, especially having been on the search for over 2 years, that definitely perks up my antenna. Wait a minute, you don't want to give away that clue. What clue? So I think that's definitely in the margin. That's the kind of thing where you write down, this might be important, that he hid it, and it's not buried, but that's not to say it's buried. And then him coming back right behind that and saying, that might be a clue. All right, so let's continue on and hear what Forrest has to say here.
Fair enough.
Okay, in 1988, I was diagnosed with what everybody thought was terminal cancer. I lost a kidney. My doctor gave me a 20% chance of living. And after that soaked in a few days, I decided, you know what, I've had so much fun collecting these things over the last 70 years, and that if I've got to go, I'm just going to take some of it with me. And why not let other people have the same thrill of the chase that I've had all of these years?
The thrill of the chase, because you started, I think, collecting, Forrest, when you were a boy, and you've discovered fascinating relics from all around the world, I think, haven't you?
Well, that's right. I've always been a collector. I found my first arrowhead in Texas when I was 9, and it was such a thrill. It launched me on a wonderful trip of discovery for all these years.
And to very exotic places like the Libyan desert at one stage, I believe.
Yes, that's true. There are treasures every place you look. You know, part of my motive in writing my book, The Thrill of the Chase, was to get kids off the couch and away from their texting machines and out of the game room and out into the mountains. You know, I've spent some time in Australia. I love that country.
Before we talk about what's in the chest, you still have a lot in your possession, a lot of very rare and valuable artifacts still, don't you?
Well, I'm still a collector. I can't say I can say they're rare. I can't say all of them are valuable. You know.
So just a couple of jump-in points. One is going backwards, as he says, Forrest Fenn does, that he's speaking to a radio announcer from New Zealand, and he says he loves Australia, which is kind of funny. If you know anybody from Australia and New Zealand, that's like saying somebody from Texas is and mixing them up with somebody from Maine. The person from Texas might be a little bit offended, and they're definitely he. I just think it's an interesting point. I mean, it's not interesting in the sense of the thrill of the chase, but that he makes that error. And then the other one that's just, I think that's kind of like a left field thing, but the Libyan desert comment, and then Forrester just walks away from it. I don't think it's important. But going back to numbers, he says in 1988 he was diagnosed with cancer. He was given a 20% chance when he was 9 years old, Arrowheads and Texas. So more numbers, 1988, 20%, 9, and I think before he said he spent 20 years in the military. So let's go back and listen to some more, shall we?
They don't have to be valuable for me to like them. If they're old and pretty good, I like it. It doesn't have to be expensive.
Including, I believe, a jade mask older than Jesus, a mummified falcon from King Tut's tomb.
Well, that may be stretching it a little bit. I do have some ancient Egyptian things, a mummified falcon, and I love that stuff, particularly ancient Egyptian things. That's fascinating to me.
Is it true you've got Sitting Bull's peace pipe?
I have Sitting Bull's peace pipe, yes, and people had questioned whether it was really Sitting Bull's or not, but we have a picture of Sitting Bull holding it, and we blew the picture up, and we proved that it's the same pipe that I have by comparing grain in the wood.
Fantastic. Forrest Fenn is...
So, yet another place to stop and think about what Forrest Fenn has just said in regards to the Sitting Bull peace pipe. And he says that he has the Sitting Bull peace pipe, and they were able to verify that it is his peace pipe by looking at the grain in the wood, the grain of the wood. And as we all know, or maybe not everybody knows, maybe somebody's new to the chase, that in Forrest Fenn's treasure hunt, The Thrill of the Chase poem, near the end of the poem, he mentions that it's in the wood. I am definitely saying, and I think that in the very beginning of the interview, he makes the point about that I don't want to give away any clues, and then he gives away a bunch of clues. What those mean, that's a discussion for another day. But let's continue listening on this. I think the point was pointing out these things first. So let's listen some more.
Is with us. All right, so you want to get people away from their screens and into the great outdoors, and this is the primary idea behind hiding the chest?
That was the primary. Well, I had three ideas, really. One of them was that I wanted to give other people the same thrill of looking for things like I've had all these years. But, a lady asked me one time, Mr. Fenn, who is your audience for this book? And I said, my audience is every redneck in Texas that has a pickup truck. He lost his job, has a wife and 8 kids, and has an adventurous spirit. I said, that's the guy I want to fill the pickup truck up with gas and head out looking for the treasure.
Wow.
I sort of agree with the announcer's reaction. The New Zealand radio interviewers now, wow. I mean, your target audience is a Texan who is a redneck, and he has a wife and 8 kids. 8? Seriously. And he's lost his job, and he's got nothing better to do but fill up his truck and go in the mountains. His wife probably would say, you know what, tell you what, you take the kids and I'll stay home. But I just wonder what that what he was thinking. Is that just a Texan thing, or is that another number that he's giving out? Is that another clue? And his target audience is a redneck from Texas. That is, it could just be a joke. Maybe that's Texas humor. Let's listen in some more.
Of the Chasers, Forrest's book. So the treasure. Can you tell us, if you wouldn't mind, what is in the treasure chest?
Well, there are 20.2 troy pounds of gold. There are 265 gold coins. Most of them are American eagles and double eagles. And they're pre-Columbian gold pieces that date to 2,500 years old. There's some ancient necklaces. There are hundreds of rubies, diamonds, emeralds, 2 beautiful Ceylon sapphires. And I also have my autobiography. I printed it. I printed it so small that I have to use a magnifying glass to read it. But I put it in a little olive jar and tightened it down, and it's in my treasure chest also. I thought somebody that might find my chest, whenever that is, would want to know something about the crazy guy that did this thing.
The crazy guy that did this thing. Everybody who knows about you and your reputation says you're genuine, and there's a chest, and we fully believe that. But what's the value of what's inside it? Do you know?
Well, I've never said it because I don't know. I've never had the jewelry appraised, and the price of gold goes up every day. And some of the coins in the treasure chest have numismatic value that exceeds their value in gold. So, people have estimated, a number of people saw the chest before I took it out and hid it, and they've estimated anywhere from $1 million to $3 million. But I don't know. But I guarantee you, the person that finds that treasure chest and raises that lid for the first time, he is just going to take a big gulp.
I'll bet. So it's fascinating. You wrote the book, I think, a couple of years ago now, and no one really picked up on it. But then you were interviewed, I think, for this may be wrong, but for American TV, I think, and then it came to the public notice. And I believe you've had to give out a couple of extra clues, have you?
Well, I made a deal with NBC News. They want me to give a clue a month for 9 months, and I told them I would do that. But I'm not gonna give any clues that are significant. That will help somebody significantly in the chase.
Okay, so that's about halfway through the interview, and I'm going to cut this into 2 parts. So, at this point, he gives. I think one interesting part of this interview is that, and I've said that like the third or fourth time, is that he gives out numbers. 1988, the 20%. When he was 9, he gives the number 8. And I don't know if there's significance to the numbers of the items in the chest, the 20.2 troy ounces, 265 gold double eagles and single eagles, and that the 2,500-year-old and hundreds. Those are all the things he says. I'm thinking he's just reading off what he knows it's in the chest, and I might almost kind of exclude that. It is interesting that he gives the numbers. The kind of, there are some oddball things he throws in there about the Libyan desert, and then the grain in the wood for the pipe, the Indian pipe. So those are the things that I picked off from the beginning of that, and then going back to the very beginning of it is that he says that he hid it, and it doesn't mean that it's not buried, but I don't want to give away a clue. So that's it for this one. This video blog 10. This is gonna be like part. I think I'm just gonna do video blog 10. I'll just do video blog 11 with the next part. So thank you for listening, and hopefully you tune into the next part and like my video and subscribe if you'd like to. We're out.